Hey, welcome back to Diabolic Shrimp, the least professional talk show on the internet. I'm your host, best-selling author and comic creator Josh Grant. And tonight we have a special show. We have multiple guests. If you're just stumbling upon this channel, Diabolic Shrimp, it's connected to the website Diabolic Shrimp. But we love to interview interesting and famous people from around the world and just hear about their lives and about writing. If that's something that's interesting to you, hit that subscribe button down below. Help us out. Join us in that journey. We love being interactive with our audience on this show. So if you're watching this live, go ahead and jump in the comments over there. Feel free to put our guests in the hot seat if you have a question for them. We love to make you a part of this show. So we have two really awesome guests this evening. We have Karen Eisenbrey and Dale Lehman, and Dale's been on the show before, so we're gonna have to see if he gets unseated, because at the tail end of the show we're gonna have a bit of trivia. So tonight we're gonna talk all about dialogue, creating awesome dialogue, what makes good dialogue. We're gonna have a lot of fun with it. So definitely, if you have a great dialogue quote that you love, throw it in the live chat over there. We love to make you a part of this show. Before we get there, just really quick, we wanted to share a couple of our highlighted books this evening. This one's from Mike Kimmel. He was actually the very first guest on this show. He was on Jay Leno. Monologues for Kids and Tweens 2. It's the second one that he's written. So he says, tired of seeing mean-spirited, snarky performance material for kids, seeking material with a positive spin? Monologues for Kids and Tweens 2 is a collection of 100 new comedy and drama pieces for our youngest performers. The scripts are easily relatable to children's real-life roles as daughters, sons, siblings, students, and young athletes. So Mike Kimmel, wonderful soul, professional actor, acted in things like shows like Zoo. And so definitely check that out. He knows what he's talking about when it comes to acting. I used to be an actor, and I've read Monologues for Kids and Tweens. Our next one, I'm excited about this one, is sorry if this interrupts here. So our next, oh no, we're showing off all the people. Pretend they weren't there. We can't ruin the surprise. And so our next highlighted book here is from Andrea Hintz. Andrea Hintz, wonderful support to other authors. Perception and Deception, a spy series. Romance, action, suspense, and intrigue in this spy series. A small town grocery store owner's simple life begins to teeter towards something perilous after a beautiful undercover agent moves into town. A #1 best-selling spy book series on Amazon. Andrea Hintz production is currently working on producing the full cast audiobook. This is going to be a high-quality cinematic audio drama with a full musical soundtrack and sound effects. So Andrea Hintz is I've heard a piece of this. I've heard a segment of it. Such a cool book series, though, if you love spy drama, but it's got a really good heart to it as well, and it really good production audiobook as well. I was actually leaning on her a bit when I was looking at making my own zombie trailer. And speaking of, Andrea's in the live chat there. What? That's me. Thank you, Josh. Well, thank you, Andrea. We love having you on here always. Wonderful support. Well, I've had them in the wings for a bit. Let's get them on there. Surprise guest, by the way, Thomas Kane. So, Karen, Tom, Dale, welcome to Diabolic Shrimp.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It is so great to have you all on here. And Tom, can you hear us okay? Sorry, Tom got in here just a minute late.
I'm sorry?
Can you hear us okay?
Well, obviously I can't hear you perfectly.
All right.
I can't hear you.
As long as you can partially hear us, that's good enough for me. So sorry, Tom's gonna have to jump in feet first. He just got in. Sorry, Tom. It's so well. Welcome so much, all three of you, to Diabolic Shrimp. You're all masters of writing. I've read some of your books and things, and so it's like I've seen your dialogue, and we're gonna talk all dialogue tonight. And tonight especially, hold up your books if you got them, at any point. Talk all about your books, because I want to connect you with readers, because all of your books are fantastic. If you're watching this and tuning in, the links to their books are actually down in the description below, so definitely check those out. So well, let's go around here. Let's start talking about it. Dialogue, because dialogue it can be a really tricky thing to write, and we have a lot of new authors on the show, and even seasoned authors, and it could be a very tricky thing to write, and you're all masters of it. I've loved all your books, and I love the characters in your books. So let's kind of go around. Let's talk about it. What is the key what is the key to crafting good dialogue? Here, Dale, I'll throw that to you there. So what would you say is kind of like the key to crafting good
I'll
dialogue?
tell you, but first I wanted to point out that Barbara is saying, "Aren't I
Yeah,
supposed to be on the show?"
I was actually just about to respond to Barbara. Barbara, by the way, Barbara's in the live chat there asking. Barbara's on this show, and Barbara, I sent you a link in in your email. So, but Dale, yeah, share with us.
Okay.
And I'll get Barbara situated. Don't you worry. Barbara, I'll send you one on Facebook as well. So, Dale, share with us. So, what would you say is like the key to crafting good dialogue, and then we'll kind of throw it out there to Tom and Kane.
I think of it as two keys, actually. The first key is that you will often hear that dialogue is basically conversation. Dialogue is not conversation. Dialogue is a cleaned up version of conversation. If you actually took a tape recorder and you recorded people just talking the way they normally do, and like you're doing right now with this show, you would hear all kinds of things like and ah. You would hear a lot of unnecessary words. You would hear them
that is
say
like
things
show.
like sort of and kind of.
I have like endless unnecessary words on this show. Dale.
Right.
God.
You would if you listen to the news, you constantly are hearing, oh, it's sort of a disaster. Well, there's no such thing as sort of a disaster. It's either a disaster or it's not, right? You will hear things such as what's the word of the day? It's been the word of the day all through the pandemic. Unprecedented. Unprecedented has been used an unprecedented number of times during the pandemic. Conversation is full of stuff like that. Dialogue, like any other aspect of your writing, needs to be cleaned up. So you have to sharpen it. You have to get rid of all the stuff that you don't need. The second part of that is that dialogue is about something. Mostly, it is about what the characters want. It isn't always directly about what the characters want. Sometimes characters don't even talk about what they want because they can be very cagey, right? But the one thing that characters never know is they never know that the reader exists. So I've run across a lot of cases where up-and-coming writers will use dialogue to explain something to the reader. But it doesn't need to be explained because all the characters already know it. That makes for very unnatural dialogue. So you have to watch that. You have to make sure what you're using your dialogue for is for developing the characters, for advancing the plot, but most of all for keeping everything in tune with what the characters want to get out of life.
Interesting. Well, and I love some of that takeaway from what I'm taking away from that. It's like you're saying, kind of cleaning it up and having a focus on your dialogue. Like it should have a focus to it, and also making it sound natural to that character. And this is why we're all talking dialogue tonight, because dialogue can be like really tricky. It's finding that balance sometimes. And I'm curious, Karen or Tom, feel free to jump in here if you have something you want to add. Like what would you say that is like the key to crafting good dialogue?
I'm going to agree with everything that Dale said, and add on that the dialogue needs to sound like the character, not necessarily like me.
Okay.
So you need to know your character's voice so that when they are interacting with other characters, that everybody sounds like themselves.
I very much agree with what you said, Karen. I think I would say my own writing process is very dialogue based. Characters. I mean, all stories are about character, but I am conscious of the character based aspect of my writing, and really when I start becoming able to write a book is when I start to be able to hear the characters' voices. And in terms of advice for new writers, I might not be, what I say might be a little frustrating, because to a certain extent, it's the creative process itself. I can't tell you how to get your character's voices in your head, but when it happens, you're going somewhere. And as Karen is saying, the character's voices may not be your voice in real life.
So I find that process really fascinating that you talked about, Tom. Like you start out with that kind of like dialogue and those character voices, and you kind of build from there. I love getting to hear from other authors, just kind of like the process, because everyone has a very different process, and that's just that's fascinating to me. So all right, well here, Tom, I'll throw this next one to you first, and then we'll kind of open it up to everyone. And again, if you're in that audience, you're welcome in the live chat to throw in any questions you have for these fine people. So what would you say then are some like dialogue don'ts? Because we were just talking about crafting good dialogue is a challenge to do. So what are some things that maybe people should avoid doing, or maybe you yourself avoid doing?
Talking about crafting.
But you can still see me. But hi.
Sorry. Welcome, Barbara. Welcome.
Maybe yourself.
Hi. Hi, everybody.
But you can still see us.
All right, here, Barbara. I'm going to mute you for just a second.
Thank you. I have another show on. Hold on.
All right, there we go. So, Barbara, I'll get you on. Can you still hear me, Barbara? Yeah, I muted you, Barbara. I'll get you back on here in a second. So, Thomas, throw us in there. What are some dialogue don'ts? And Barbara, I'll get you in just a second, okay, to be able to speak.
I guess I would pick up that question by saying that I personally am kind of, well, actually, no, I'm going to qualify this even a little more. When I am giving advice to other people, I'm sort of an anarchist. If anyone is looking for writing advice and you are not already familiar with the horror writer Anne Rice's essays on how to be a good writer, I strongly recommend them. And the essence of what Anne Rice says is, do it your own way, follow your own vision. What works for one person will not work for a different person, and vice versa. So I'm a little cautious about saying don't ever do this. But in terms of things that I'm sort of aware of and do try to pick up on when I'm editing my own work, Dale made a very good point. Dale made a wonderful point when he was saying that there are things people do in conversation that you don't necessarily want your characters doing in your story. And there is sort of a tricky balance to strike there, because on the one hand, as Karen and I were saying, you want to bring in your characters' ways of expressing themselves. That's a major part of showing who your characters are, and bringing out getting readers to come into the story. But at the same time, there are things people do in conversation that would seem over. There are things that people say a lot in conversation that you don't want to say quite as often when you're writing. For instance, in I don't know if you can in this book, The Rebels of Care City.
Yeah.
Probably the title is probably backward on your screen, but
no, it's in there. It's in there. There's a character that has sort of a writing critique partner of mine described her as the Moxie girl, and she uses a lot of slang. But what I sort of discovered as I was writing it is that a person like her in real life will start every sentence by saying, "Yo, girl, do this," and it gets very annoying if the character in the book uses that slang expression every time. So I try to do it in moderation. Yeah, well, and cleaning it. Well, it's kind of like what Dale was saying, right? It's like we're cleaning up. Although we shouldn't compliment Dale too much; it'll go to his head. He's our incumbent winner of trivia here, so you're all gonna have to unseat him later. But he, it is kind of part of that cleaning it up. And I do notice, like when I go back, I have to redo a lot of it. So here, Barbara, we're going to get you in. Andrea Hintz has a question here, and then Barbara, I'll unmute you here. And sorry, I put you on mute. And so I invite Barbara on the show, and then I put her on mute. The poor soul. And so she's so nice, and she let me on her radio show before too. And I'm just a monster on I put the diabolic in diabolic shrimp. So Barbara, so Andrea Hintz here again, wonderful support of other authors. Reach out to Andrea sometime if you ever want to. She's a great support to other authors. She's also an author herself. So Andrea Hintz Productions. How do you get yourself into character when writing a character voice that's extremely different from your own? So Barbara, do you have any insight on that?
Sorry about that. I had the other YouTube thing on at the same time, and so that's why I had that strange sound.
Oh, no worries. I'm never actually listening to you all anyway. I'm actually watching something over here.
Writing a book in 5 different perspectives. 5, now not points of view, because I was corrected by Vivian Zabel, who is publisher of mine, and she said, no, if you're writing in 5 different characters, but they're all in first person point of view, then there's just your perspective. So in 5 different perspectives, I have 5 different character voices in my book. And so in order to think in 5 different characters, I have to get myself into their mindset. One of them is going to be an Olympic gymnast. Another is a dancer. Another is a painter. Another is a girl who is just a cheerleader now, but she didn't feel good about herself, and now she does.
Oh, such a good book, by the way. It's down in the description, by the way. Everyone's up here. Their books are down there, so I definitely want to connect people with you. Sorry, go ahead, Barbara.
So that's that. In that book, I am constantly changing my dialogue, and it's very difficult. But you get yourself into the mindset of the character, and suddenly you're writing and in that frame of mind. I mean, to me, once I'm writing as a character, I'm writing as that character. I am that girl who got up in the morning to practice on the balance beam. I am that girl who was a bulimic and now is struggling not to be one. And I am that girl who just broke up with her boyfriend and is feeling free because her girlfriend told her that. And these kinds of things are not in my life. This is not me. I never was that. So it's a kind of thing where I have to be this very composed gymnast, yet I have to be also very, and the other characters are just as hard to do. The only one that's really easy is Carolyn, and Carolyn is very much like my daughter or me, so Carolyn is easy. But the others, a painter, I'm not a painter.
Well, I'm curious from all you. It's like it's kind of interesting, and you can go into this later when we answer questions. But it's like for me as a writer, it's like I find sometimes my favorite sequences that I've written, like were actually the ones I struggled with. Like sometimes I find the ones that I'm like that's easier for me because I have had that experience. Like they don't turn out as nice as some of the ones I've really had to wrestle through. And so I'll throw this to Karen here. And again, feel free to answer any question we've asked before later on. But let's throw it to Karen here. And for Karen, like from your books, like what was one of your favorite kind of like dialogue sequences to write? Is there one that stands out to you? I know it's hard when it's
Probably.
Like all of us as writers, we're our books are like our children. It's like
this from the Gospel According to Saint Rage, there's something really early on where the main character, who has been invisible, that's how she introduces herself, that she was turned invisible by a bully. And in the second chapter, somebody puts a hat on her head and can see her. And so then she kind of has to talk to him. So it starts off just, here, hold this. Somebody plops a hat on my head. excuse me? The guy turns around and OMG, it's Jackson Duran. He looks at me, and instead of saying, sorry, I thought you were somebody else, or more likely, sorry, I thought you were somebody, he says, darling, that hat is you. And she is an overthinker. She overthinks for a little while, and then she comes back with, what? That hat loves you, girl. I might have to let you keep it. I don't wear hats. Now you do. There's a mirror there. Check it out. And it just kind of goes on like that of her being uncertain, underconfident, used to people not even noticing her. And here is the most popular, best looking guy in school focusing on her and telling her, no, you do wear hats. That hat looks good on you. You should keep it. And Jackson was so much fun to write because he's so confident. The entire opposite of Barbara or me at that age.
Yeah.
And
well, I was gonna say, I'm noticing a lot of connection.
Showed up.
Well, I love that. I was gonna say I love writing that in books too. It's like you can have that character that isn't as confident, right? I have a character like that in a book where that has to talk to the confident person. But I love like you kind of said she kind of overthinks a little bit. It's like I love interspersing some of that inner thought, and I wonder how you kind of balance some of that.
And well, the thing with her is that her narration, because she's the main character, she's narrating it in first person. Her narration is very articulate, very much overthought. But she has a big vocabulary and she knows a lot of things. But when she talks, she's hesitant and she ums a lot. She says, what, or back up, or kind of has trouble keeping up and doesn't always know what to say when she's speaking aloud. So that's kind of a good way to show her character, that the reader getting the narration knows that she is a smart, articulate person, and then she opens her mouth and the dumbest things just come out, or she can't finish her sentences.
That's and again, like it's describing this show with me, like as your host. that's about what happens with me there. So, all right, well, and Andrea, by the way, again says such a sweet interaction in your dialogue, Karen. You can feel the heart. You definitely can. And so, very kind. All right, let's throw it back to Dale and Tom, and then we're gonna jump into audience questions here in just a second. So, and
could I just read
please do.
my dialogue pieces that I felt, or is this just for Karen? You're just giving Karen the question.
Oh, well, we can go back to it. Well, I'm going to jump to Dale and Tom really quick, Barbara, and then we can jump back to it again at any time. Feel free to use examples from your book. I love connecting people with books, and let's jump to really quick Dale and Tom, and then feel free to answer stuff from earlier too if you'd like. So, but I'm curious, should dialogue sequences, in your opinion, because again, Tom was saying earlier, like this is kind of what I do. It's not everyone has to do it, but in your opinion, should dialogue sequences be longer or should they be shorter?
Yes.
Yes.
It depends. It depends entirely on what it is you're doing. There are some cases where I have an extremely short scene with an extremely short dialogue sequence, and there's some where it goes on longer. I probably tend to write shorter things more often than longer things, but it's very individual. It depends on how you're telling the story and what you're actually trying to accomplish. I did kind of want to go back to Andrea's. Is it Andrea or Andrea? I have a daughter. I have a daughter who's Andrea, so I always say Andrea. Andrea, okay. Her question about getting into a character voice is extremely different from yours. I've got several books. I've got 6 books out. 3 of them are in a series. This is the first of my Howard County mysteries, the Fibonacci murder.
And Dale writes some fantastic mysteries. Especially Dale really captures you with the mystery. One of his actually won a Shrimpy on here too. So go on, Dale.
And the fourth novel in that series is A Day for Bones. Is in editing right now. We'd hope to have it out by now, but other things happen, so it's going to be a little while. But that series features 3 detectives. I don't have one protagonist; I have 3, and in order to make them all very different characters, I gave them different strengths. So one of them is very perceptive and has a almost photographic memory. One of them, doing a kind of a flip on what you would expect. One of them is very intuitive. He's a male. One of them is very analytic. She's a female. So normally it would be the other way around, but I flipped them for this. And their dialogue is very much driven by the kinds of things that not only have happened to them in the past, but also their strengths. On the other hand, I've done things like this, Space Operatic, which is get that center, which is a humorous science fiction novel. And in my humor novels, I have a tendency to like to do extreme things, just go overboard with the characters. So I've got in both this and Weasel Words, which was the Golden Shrimpy winner that Josh mentioned. I just do completely insane things where people are saying things and misunderstanding each other and coming up with the most ridiculous interpretations of what each other has said. In Space Operatic, there's a line by one of the characters who says, "So and so is going to have a cow," and the other character says, "Why would she want one of those?"
I love having like. I guess I do this too. It's like I love having kind of rules for different ones of my books. Like you were saying, like in this one, I kind of have it this way. This person's kind of more analytic, and this person's this. And it's like, and I kind of jump in on that too, where it's like one of mine's that's like it has to be very realistic dialogue, whereas the other one, like my fantasy one, it's like everything has to be kind of witty. It's like you have to kind of feel like you're watching a play. Angela Krowski, by the way, says, "Hi." Hi, Angela. Welcome to Diabolic Shrimp. Everyone says hi there, I guess. And then, sorry, it's taking a second for Angela Krowski.
I also wanted to, sorry.
And then, I was gonna say Andrea was also complimenting you with your daughter. There, it says best name in the universe. And then we also have. Sorry, I always try and shout out our live audience here. We have Froggy X Rose says hello, Froggy X Rose. All right, Dale, you wanted to share something, and now I'm going to throw it to Tom.
One other thing. This was just something that. It's a very good example of how dialogue works for me when it's working its best. This scene actually just kind of spilled out of me one day, and it's from Space Operatic, in which the rich guy, who's also the one who's very grasping and controlling, he's trying to get control of everything. His name's Artemis Worthington. Has an encounter with his wife, who up until this point didn't even appear in the novel. I don't think she actually appears after this scene either. It's just a one-shot thing. So the way it starts out is still another idiot. He was thinking about idiots in his life. Still another idiot barged in before he had his shirt on. "You're not the man I married," she commented, giving him his excessive poundage a cursory glance. "Indeed not," he said. "I'm a billion times richer. What do you want, Maisie? You know I don't like to be interrupted." "Oh dear, did I forget to make an appointment again?" There was no point. He pulled his shirt on and buttoned it up, and so forth and so on. And there's a little bit of exposition in there. And then, "You've been ignoring family responsibilities, Artemis. Family responsibilities are your watch, not mine. I have a company to manage. That's hardly an excuse for forgetting what today is." And a little bit more. And then, "What's today?" he finally asked. "Only your youngest granddaughter's first birthday. Tell her I said happy birthday." "Really, Artemis? She's one, Maisie. She won't notice my absence. She certainly will. And even if she doesn't remember it 20 years from now, the rest of the family will. The rest of the family should find something more constructive to do than interfere with my schedule." And so that kind of thing keeps going on and on. And when you get to the end of this, the last thing after this big argument that's just going back and forth and going nowhere, and he leaves, the last thing she says is, "He's crazy about me, the big jerk."
I love those like walkaway lines too. Like, so here, let's jump down to let's jump down to Tom. Barbara, I'll throw the first audience question to you, okay? Because I know you want to share too. And so Tom, so what about you? Like, going back to that, like should dialogue sequences be longer or shorter? And feel free to answer any of the other questions too.
Well, I think that I'm definitely going to agree with what's been said. That it depends. It depends. I tend to use a lot of dialogue in my book because of books because a lot of what I'm writing about is sort of political intrigue and
Uh-huh.
and espionage. I think and Andrea and I have a bit in common there, and situations where the action is not physical. It's interpersonal conflict between people,
Uh-huh.
and where the suspense is will this person will this person trick the other person. So dialogue is a big part of
I'm
that.
actually going to rename this show as that as well, like interpersonal conflict. That's that's the name of the show. Go on, Tom. Sorry to interrupt you.
and and another way in which dialogue makes its way into my stories is I do actually I used to be I used to talk for a living. I was a university lecturer, and I am trying to bring I'm trying to I was a university lecturer in the field of politics, and I bring some real political ideas into my stories, and so sometimes my stories contain actual speeches, which I try to make speeches that someone would want to listen to in real life, and so again you have characters talking for a page, but at the same time if I'm writing a combat scene, there might be no dialogue at all.
So, well,
Or characters, if the characters are doing something, not so much interacting with each other, but with their environment, or in their head. In those situations, less dialogue.
well, and that's well, I just find it like fascinating. Like, if someone actually is we have KLS here, and I'll throw this to Barbara. It's kind of jumping with that. It's like different kinds of dialogue for different places, and you were talking about like real life. It's like I create these things for real life and I speak in real life. Earlier we kind of touched on like we were talking about like dialogue can be different from real life. So, and again, like there's no definitive answer on this show. I don't think we're going to find, so we all have different opinions. So, but KLS here, we're going to jump into our segment where audience members feel free to jump in that live chat. If you're watching this live, share with us your questions if you have it. KLS says, what are some tips for writing internal dialogue, not monologue? Interesting. And it's interesting getting into what is monologue and what isn't. That actually gets into our trivia later. So, so Barbara, sorry, throw this one to you. What are your feelings on this? What are your thoughts?
In my books, there's a lot of internal dialogue. There is dialogue, then the characters thinking about what they're saying, and then there's more dialogue that's not at all what they're saying. So the best thing is to make it feel like it's normal. Like, what would be their thoughts? What would be your character's thoughts while they're talking? Are they worried? Are they happy? Is this somebody that they feel comfortable speaking with? If not, what are their thoughts? Are they nervous? So all of these things can be going through someone's head as they're speaking. And I have one scene that I think I'd like to read to you that is very much what this internal dialogue is.
Okay, yeah, share us a snippet of your scene if you can find it.
Taylor, if I could be like Jennifer Taylor, which is
that's a good book. That's what I was like.
So I'm just
while you find that, everyone could be thinking about, because I'm kind of curious, like at what point do you use internal dialogue, and at what point do you use emotion versus describing emotion? Go ahead, Barbara.
Here's the scene. Okay. It starts out, the girls come into the gym and they were talking about it, and this is what they were saying before. Becky and I slide into our loose camp shorts and a t-shirt. Once they're on, we race onto the gym floor. Always better to be early for gym the first day. This is all narration. So Becky and I sit on the low seats on the bleachers, but Jennifer and her group saunter into the gym and choose the highest seats, avoiding the rest of us. I'll skip that. I almost feel comfortable. My breathing returns to normal. I hear giggles from Jennifer and her group, but I ignore it. Maybe it won't be so bad this year, Carolyn. Becky always tries to cheer me up now. And here's her internal dialogue. This wasn't true a few years ago. I had to cheer her up a lot. Becky's brothers are just turning 5 and they're both in kindergarten. Her mom.
I think we lost you for a second there, Barbara. All right. Well, we lost Barbara for just a second there. So I'll kind of throw it out to everyone, and if we get Barbara back, we'll get back to it. So I'm curious, at what point do you not use internal dialogue and rather use like emotion? Does anyone want to jump in there? Dale, looks like you have something to say, and Karen, I'll get to you.
Let Karen go first.
All right, go ahead, Karen.
Dang. I think that if you're using internal dialogue as a kind of way of showing that they're saying one thing, but they're thinking and feeling another, that the internal dialogue does portray the emotion. So, for instance, if two people are pretending to be friendly, but your point of view character is thinking, "You jerk, I'm going to get you," but they're saying, "Oh, it's so nice to see you." Having that internal line that they don't say aloud, but it's written out as if it would be something they would say aloud. Okay, they're
throw it in there.
They're angry. They don't like this person, but they're keeping it down. They're keeping it covered and pretending to be some other way for whatever reason. And maybe the reader knows that at that point, but maybe they don't.
Interesting. Okay, Dale, did you want to?
I'm glad you went first, because that actually kind of solidified some of what I was thinking. Is that
in your internal dialogue?
And the way I use it, internal dialogue has two functions, at least two primary functions. One is what the character is thinking about. For example, in my mystery novels, I'll frequently have a detective who's on a scene looking at something, gathering the evidence and so on, and sifting that evidence in their mind, and they will be thinking about, well, this kind of indicates this, but that indicates that, and so forth and so on. That is a very logical process. The other thing I will do is when I will actually have a line of dialogue that the character doesn't say, and usually in the way I do it, I set that in italics to differentiate it from the other kind of internal monologue. And so, for example, in my forthcoming Howard County mystery, there's a break-in at a gun shop, and Lieutenant Peller, who's the primary detective, is investigating that, and he finds out that the back door was left unlocked. And he thinks to himself, well, while other people are around him, he thinks to himself, an open and shut case. They opened the door, took what they wanted, and shut it again. And that's something that he would actually say if he didn't care about offending the people who are around him, because he's basically accusing the shop owner of being sloppy, but he doesn't actually say it.
Yeah, well, and it's kind of interesting. It's like when to
use
it. Yeah, and Barbara, we did lose. Yeah, I was like, Barbara, we did lose you on the about halfway through your internal dialogue there. I guess the universe is like trying to stop good literature from being shared on us. That's why the least professional talk show. But all right, well, I'll throw this out to everybody because we're gonna get into trivia in just a couple minutes. But I wanted to get a couple more audience questions here, and I'll kind of throw it out there. And KLS actually is clarifying here. Interesting. I was thinking more along the lines of one character having a conversation with him or herself, trying to convince himself of something, for example. Okay, so it's like if you're having an internal debate, what are some tips for maybe writing that internal debate? Barbara, you wanted to share? And then maybe we'll get Tom.
I'd like to try again if I could, because this is crazy. My character has a conversation about yeah. It's more like a way that she's thinking about whether or not her friend is bulimic the next day, and she's thinking about it, and she's just like, she's not sure.
Is she like weighing it back and forth or something?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and so she's thinking about this, and she's trying to think about whether or not Jennifer is going to be actually go to Dale, because I can't find it.
All right. Hey, Tom, I'll let you jump in here. And Tom, what are your feelings on, like, 'cause especially Tom, you kind of write kind of like political pieces. You have a lot of strategy and stuff. You used to lecture as well. And so if someone's struggling back and forth, or they're like weighing the options, it's like, do you kind of do you feel like that's a good place for dialogue and go back and forth, almost like a golem type of situation from like Lord of the Rings, or like, do you feel like maybe that's more of a, I should just explain it through the emotions of what they're feeling?
I think it depends on the character, and I think this question sort of raises something that I recognize as a challenge in writing, because from the point of view of telling the story, internal dialogue like this is great. This helps you tell the reader, what decisions your character is making, what conflict your character is facing, what your character's, if you're talking about strategy, how does your character go about making this strategy? And if you have a character that is analytical and introspective, it does make sense for the character to think through all of these issues and do it in the form of internal dialogue. When you have a character that is not so self-aware, it does not make as much sense. And one way that I personally handle that is I tend to write a lot of self-aware characters. But since I don't only write self-aware characters, one approach that I take is I alternate between first and third person point of view in my writing. And when I have a character like my main character, like Mara, who is very very much in her head. I write her in first person because she is a character in her own story, and that's the way that she tells it. But then her boyfriend Kieran, who really does not question much. He just sort of accepts what his society tells him to accept, and this turns out to be a problem for the two of them. I write Kieran in third person because Kieran has a lot less internal dialogue, and he is just sort of doing what he thinks he's supposed to do in a certain situation, and thinking what society tells him a man ought to think in a certain situation. And so there's less dialogue there. Less internal dialogue. But of course, one thing that means is that when I want, Kieran cannot be the protagonist in certain parts of the story because
she's the protagonist on this show. Karen is
missing the things that I want to do. Yeah.
I find it interesting, Tom. One thing I find interesting is you kind of did a point of view shift per character, and I find that's actually a really interesting way of doing it, especially the different ones. So, Barbara, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. Can I just?
Oh yeah, share us a snippet of that writing if you like. And then Karen, I'll get you.
Yeah, I actually have this now. All right. She goes to the mall with her friend, and then she goes home with her friend and finds that her friend is in the bathroom getting sick from having hot dogs. And the mom says, "Oh, it's just hot dogs." And she starts thinking as she's talking, oh, if you're okay, that's fine with me. I guess it's how you stay so thin all the time. I mean, we eat the same amount of stuff. You don't gain an ounce. I keep getting fatter. It's a curse I have. She says, I could lose weight. And then she says to herself, I know I'm talking too much, but something doesn't feel right here. And I always talk too much when I'm nervous. I guess I'm just a mess with the breathing thing and the talking too much. I'm wondering why Jennifer would even bother with me. I suppose she had no choice with her mom inviting me. She's just being polite for her sake. And then she starts leaving, and she says, I have a feeling Jennifer is lying, but why would she lie? Was perfect Jennifer not so perfect after all? Suddenly I feel a whole lot better. So in other words, she was having this conversation with herself about Jennifer, who used to bully her and now is being friendly with her. And now she wonders what's going on in Jennifer's life. Why is she so, is she not?
Sorry. So do you feel like it's like, if you're kind of using a lot of that internal dialogue, is it good to use like a lot of questions then?
Yes, you ask a lot of questions of yourself, and you're also answering them at the same time. You're asking and answering. You're putting out little theories for yourself. And then when things make sense, then you think, yes, this is exactly what I thought. This is really true. This is what I thought, that she's not as perfect as I thought she was, and this made her feel better. Because
this is how I come up with like new ideas for Diabolic Shrimp. I just get on the show and I put up like 5 boxes of myself, and I ask myself questions like I'm a show host. So you guys can help be my think tank. So all right, Karen, I'm going to throw the last question to you, and then we're going to get on to we all have to unseat. We're a team in this. We have to unseat Dale from winning any more trivia, and our audience can play as well. So an audience, we love your questions. So keep throwing those at us. If you're watching this later, throw them down in the comment section. I love to try and share these with our guests. So our last question here, I guess maybe I'm talking too long because it's like Chauvin says, how do you keep dialogue from running too long? Or we were kind of talking about it, like, is there too long? So Karen, what are your feelings on that? And then we're going to jump into trivia.
Well, I mean, that's just editing. You write what you write, and then you come back to it and go, okay, I have this long dialogue passage. It feels like it kind of is dragging. What of this really needs to be here? What if this can maybe go somewhere else, or is repetitious, or is just kind of throat clearing and small talk? There's a place for that. You don't do as much small talk, but you can do it just a tiny bit. But if you have this much, you need to cut it way down. So it's like anything else. It's editing. Does this belong here?
I feel like you can have. Yeah, I feel like you can have some small talk in there.
Yeah. A friend of mine told me that, a good rule of thumb is that you look at the scene and you decide what your character's motivation is and what the goal of this scene is. Does the dialogue move the scene forward? And does anything in that scene not move the dialogue move that scene forward? Just cut it. She said, just cut anything that doesn't move the scene forward. And once it does, that's what it is. That's when it's ready.
And KLS, by the way, says, thanks for the tips on back and forth talking, says Golem. Lol. And yes, says Golem. We're one big Golem. And I like how this is kind of poetic. It actually comes full circle. Our last question there kind of goes back to actually kind of what Dale was saying in the beginning, right? It's like, good dialogue it has a purpose and it's kind of cleaned up. And but I'm also okay with like sometimes like having a bit of that small talk, like Karen kind of said. So again, dialogue's the trickiest thing. There's so many different ways. Dale, you wanted to
yeah, Josh, the other thing is that you have to remember too, the dialogue is simply a part of the toolkit for telling your story. So when is dialogue enough, or when is it too much? It's just like what Barbara said, is that it depends on whether or not you have achieved the goals for the scene that you're writing. One thing I like to do is, whenever possible, I like to end on some kind of suspenseful note. Either there is danger, or when I'm writing something humorous, there's just something totally ridiculous that's just happened, where you can kind of leave things hanging a little bit, and you're letting the reader fill in things and anticipate what's coming next. You very seldom want dialogue to explain things. Sometimes one character has to explain something to another character, but characters never have to explain anything to the reader.
Interesting. Okay. Well, that's a really good insight.
Like I said before, is that characters don't know that readers exist. So you can never have characters talking to the reader. They can talk to each other, and in that course of doing that, reveal things to the reader. But it has to make sense for the characters to do that with each other.
Right.
And it goes right back to I guess show, not tell. And even though dialogue is talking, it's more like show them talking, don't tell what they should be focused on. All right, well, that's
the same thing with that internal dialogue business. When you said emotion versus internal dialogue, well, emotion, you have to show emotion. Internal dialogue can be a way of doing that.
All right, well, all right, so let's jump in. Let's talk a little bit of dialogue.
Wait, can I just say one thing?
Yeah, go for it, Barbara, real quick.
Yeah. In that scene, you didn't hear all of it. I decided to take an entire flashback and put it into dialogue because I didn't want a prologue in my book, and that everybody had to know about that zipline scene. So it's all in dialogue. So,
okay, so then they're kind of talking about, which is a nice. Yes. I mean, I always think it's like a movie, right? It's like movies never have like narration. So, or I mean, they have a little bit sometimes, but it's like, but it's like it's mostly just showing people talking, and that's where you get a lot of it. And so, all right, so we're gonna jump into a little bit of dialogue trivia. Our audience, feel free to play along. I think some of these people could see some of it, so but they won't cheat. They won't look at your answers. So we're gonna play a little bit of a dialogue, true or false. All right, and we have to unseat Dale because he's won too much already.
That's why I wanted to keep talking over you.
Yep. And so we're gonna do so for this one, you're either gonna go true, or you're gonna go false. Okay, so kind of spaz out. So true or false. I'm going to read a statement, and you're either going to say true or false. I'm going to write down your points, and we'll see who's the I try and come up with some sort of title. The Duke or Duchess of Dialogue. For the next year, and we'll see. Some of these are pretty tough here. So, all right, you ready? So once again, true, false, and if you're an audience playing. See how many you can get to. Our audience is usually pretty on it. I'm pretty sure they Google everything. And so, all right, here we go. There's only a few questions, and we're going to kind of speed on through because we're running sadly a little low on time. I love hearing your insights, by the way, on dialogue. So, all right, Pride and Prejudice is in the top 4 books with the most dialogue of all time per capita. So Pride and Prejudice is in the top in a list, the top 4 books of the most dialogue. Man, you are all on it. That was a good warm-up round. It is true. So Pride and Prejudice apparently is mostly dialogue on that one. Our audience is on it too today. All right. So next up, Macbeth is famous for saying to be or not to be.
False.
All right. Well, man, I was like, it's a tiebreaker. It was not Macbeth. It was actually Hamlet. So you are correct. That is false. All right. Coming up here. And again, our audience is actually split on that one. And so there are 5 different types of dialogue in literature. Officially, there are 5 different types of dialogue in literature.
Types.
True or false?
I'm going to say true because somebody has said that there are 5 different types, even though somebody else has said there are 6 or 7 or 8.
All right. Barbara looks unsure, but I'm sorry, Karen, you're going to have to fall behind on this one. I'm so sorry. And so, I wouldn't have known this. I'm not an English major personally. Apparently, there are 5 different types. They're called directed, misdirected, modulated, interpolation, and inner. So I guess I was like, I wouldn't have known that. That's why I like doing trivia, because I get to learn about it. So, all right, next up, a monologue. A monologue where one character speaks can exist in a dialogue. A monologue can exist within a dialogue. Tom, what do you got? You were all on it. Apparently, yes, a monologue is allowed. It's still called a monologue, even if it's sandwiched in dialogue, if a character is speaking for a good long time within the dialogue. It's kind of tricky, I guess. I'm not sure who decides these things, but I guess that's the official term. Dialogue has to be between 2 characters.
False.
All right. Well, that is actually false. So because they have that caveat of inner dialogue, then it can be within yourself. And I'm not sure, again, who decides the boundaries on that. And so our audience is,
and it could also be among 3 or 4 characters.
Yes,
that's true. That is actually a great point on that. So semantics, us writers, we love to debate semantics. And so, all right, next up, A Quiet Place is the movie with multiple characters made in the last 50 years with the least amount of dialogue. So of movies made in the last 50 years that have multiple characters, A Quiet Place is the one with the least amount of dialogue.
Because it's quiet.
I guess no one's getting this one. That is actually false. The movie with the least amount of dialogue between multiple characters in the last 50 years is actually Castaway with Tom Hanks. I guess that maybe they're counting that beach ball as a character. I don't know.
I don't know.
I had to point this out, by the way. KLS actually was throwing
That seems like a stretch.
A great concept there.
Sign
KLS
language.
says, except sign
Yeah.
language, because there was actually a lot of dialogue within that movie with sign language, and I love that. And so Andrea Hintz also says, Wilson. All right, number 7 here. We're running down on the clock and on questions here. So it's head to head with everybody actually. All right, number 7. I'm gonna have to pronounce this. A non-epistolary novel is a novel that has a focus on dialogue. A non-epistolary novel is a novel that has focus on dialogue. True or false? All right. That is actually false. So that is actually false. So a non-epistolary novel is actually one that is entirely it's not, it has no dialogue in it. So a non-epistolary. I'm just gonna keep saying that because I'm trying to get that word in my vocabulary.
That sounds like it should be a novel that's not in the form of a letter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all right, here's another great word for you, another great term. Pleonastic. Pleonastic describes a character or person who is wordy. Pleonastic describes a character or person who's wordy. True or false? Throw it up there. Running out of time. Dale's cheating. True or false? So, all right. Well, pleonastic is one that describes a person who is wordy. So, oh man, we are head to head. I think everyone is actually tied. So we have 2 questions left here. Everyone is actually tied right now. So last 2 questions. Let's see who takes it away. Duke or Duchess of Dialogue. I've a feeling we're not in Kansas anymore is a line from both the movie and the book, The Wizard of Oz. That is incorrect. It is actually false.
Oh,
I'm sorry,
I was
what?
going to change my thing in the middle.
Sorry, it's too late, Barbara. And so yeah, so it's actually only in the movie. It's actually not in the book. There's so many weird things that are only in the movie.
I
and
know.
not
I
in the
was
book.
going to change my thing in the middle. Oh,
All right, here's the last one. Let's see who gets ahead because it is a tie currently, and this is it's actually perfect timing because we're almost out of time. In The Lord of the Rings, the book series, and the movie, actually, some of them share some stuff. Gandalf says, "Run, you fools, to get the Fellowship of the Ring, to flee the goblins in Balrog of Moria." So in The Lord of the Rings, Gandalf says, "Run, you fools, to get the Fellowship of the Ring, to flee the goblins in Balrog of Moria." True or false? Ooh, everyone said false. You know, this is the first time we had that. I actually didn't come up with a tiebreaker question. You are correct. That is false. He actually says, "Fly, you fools." It's a little minor thing, but fly, you fools. I don't know. So, wow, we actually have a tie, and I actually did not create a tiebreaker question. You know, I think it's fitting that dialogue to share the award, because you can't have dialogue without having at least a multiple, even inside your own head. You have to have a multiple kind of perspective on that. And so, hey, again, KLS is on that, by the way. KLS says, "Fly, you fools." KLS is Googling this. I promise you. And so
I will graciously bequeath my share of the prize to the other 3 participants because I already have plenty.
Yeah. You didn't even give it to me, Dale. I
Oh,
never
you
get
just
anything
took
on
the
this
good
show.
out.
No,
No.
it's just
Keep your title.
So, oh, there we go. Here's the title, by the way. KLS, you're so witty. Dialogue. It's a
Dialogue.
dialogue.
Yeah.
Sorry. So there we go. We had an epic dialogue for our dialogue crew. Well, Karen, Dale, Barbara, and Tom. I was like, time flies when you're having fun, and sadly we are out of time. It just kind of blew on through. I'm surprised it hasn't cut us off yet. So I'm going to send you all back down below, back into my subconscious or something. Hang out for just a second. But thank you so much for being on the show, all of you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, it's such a blast. Hang out for
Thank you
just a
so
second.
much, Dale. You should speak.
Well, that was our whole dialogue crew. Again, please do check out their books down below. If you were joining us live, thank you so much for joining us. We love having you on this show. We love being interactive all the time. Hit that subscribe if you haven't had a chance. We also support wonderful, universally good causes like childhood disease research and ocean exploration and cleanup. So hitting that subscribe definitely helps us with that. Please do check out those books down below. If you liked any of those highlighted books, they're also down below in the link there. If you're watching this later, write a comment down there. I love to share that with these fine people. But thanks for spending your evening with us. This has been another Diabolic Shrimp. Have a good night.